Good morning. This morning I'm coming to you from outside under my carport here at the farm. You can probably hear my goats and probably the dogs and some chickens and some birds around me. Um, I'm also very windy. It is kind of windy outside, so I hope it doesn't affect the microphone, but it's beautiful out here right now. The weather is nice and it is just a gorgeous morning this morning. I had a pretty different kind of night last night. Yesterday, here comes my father in law. Yesterday, I had a kind of a rough day. My drains are rubbing on my side, and it has made my side very raw. And so, even though I didn't want to, I've had to revert back to wearing my bra. I am wearing my own bra, a sports bra, however, not that little yucky one that they gave me at the hospital. And I now have my drain tubes hooked up right here in the front. So that did give me some freedom to sleep last night. Whenever I turned, however, I went to move my move my bra down, and I think I caught my stitch and pulled it a bit. I'm on live on Facebook, Grandpa. You want to tell anybody good morning this morning?
No.
He says no. So anyway, and I think I pulled my stitch a bit, so that's kind of aggravating this morning. However, everything else has been pretty good. I got up with a headache early this morning and do realize that I cannot open the Tylenol bottle. Now, the Advil bottle is not as childproof, just so you know. It opens up pretty easy with that childproof cap, but the Tylenol bottle, not so much. So I had to get my little stripper there up and have him open my bottle for me this morning. My drain amounts are better. For the first time ever, the right side is pink and not red today. However, it's still higher than we would like it to be. The left side is finally in the lower numbers, so that is a good thing. So yesterday, I left y'all off with we were at Dr. Habosh's office. And at Dr. Habosh's office, we were waiting to get the news about if we could have reconstructive surgery using the flap or if we could not. And I had talked to y'all about how I felt like the Lord had prepared me for that meeting and how I was feeling about that before we even went in, and how Satan had whispered in my ear about having a bigger concern about ovarian cancer and all of these things. So when I went in to meet with him, my concerns were more along those lines. And I feel like Brian's concerns were more about me and how I saw myself as a woman and how I felt about my own identity and how I would feel about my body image and those kinds of things. So they call our name. We go back. They seat us. He sits and he talks to us in his office. And with that, he is so soft-spoken and so kind. And he tells us, he says, well, we got all the results from your testing, and I just want to go over those with you. So with that being said, because of your previous surgery, you will not be a candidate for reconstruction. There are adhesions and those kinds of things there. And I heard that. It just was like, okay, so that's okay. And I remember Brian reaching over and gently grabbing my leg, and he gave me a squeeze, and I looked over to him, and he looked like he had been kicked in the belly by a donkey. I mean, his wind was out of his sail because he knew I was very adamant that I did not want to have any other form of reconstruction, that I just felt like I just wanted to go the most natural way possible. That was my choice. It's not every woman's choice. It is up completely up to you, but that was my choice. So I just looked at him and I could just see the wind leaving his cells. For me, I was like, moving on. I think that kind of took the doctor and Brian both by surprise. Like maybe I was in some kind of denial or having some kind of acceptance issue, but I really had already accepted. And I said, what else did the scan say? And he says, well, everything else was fine. And I said, what does that mean? What does everything else is fine? You know, because I'm a nurse and I don't like to just brush over things. So I'm like asking much more pointed questions. I'm like, so what about my ovaries? Oh, well, your ovaries are clear. We see nothing wrong with your ovaries. Well, what about my tubes? Well, those look good. So I'm asking much more pointed questions now. He says, let me read it to you. And he told me about a back issue that I knew I'd had since I was a child. No big deal as far as I was concerned. No new news, you know. So I was like, okay, whew, I felt like the weight of the world had been lifted off of me. And I still felt like Brian had felt like an anvil had been dropped upon him. They sent me back out to the waiting room. They had us go sit in the waiting room to wait to see my regular surgeon because they share the same office, Dr. Birdwell. I didn't know at the time that it was actually so Dr. Birdwell and Dr. Habash could have a little meeting about me because Dr. Habash was concerned. And he went to Dr. Birdwell and he said, I'm concerned about your patient. I'm concerned that she's not coping well. I'm concerned that she isn't really understanding the full gravity of her diagnosis. Maybe she doesn't understand everything, which is I'm grateful for. I'm grateful I have a doctor who was really concerned about me. And she said, well, let me talk to her. I've kind of gotten to know her. Let me see her. Let me spend some time with her and let me see what I think is going on. And then we'll go from there. So she calls Brian and I back. And when she calls us back, I hug her neck and we're talking. And she says, she starts asking me questions. You know, Lynette, how do you feel about that? And I told her, I said, well, I told you from the beginning that if I couldn't have the flap procedure, I wasn't having reconstruction. I knew from the beginning that there was a possibility I might not be able to because of my previous surgery. I said my bigger fear had become that there would be something in my ovaries because those kind of go hand in hand oftentimes with breast cancer and ovarian cancer. If it is the type that I have that is hormone fed, I said, so I felt relief. And she said, there's nothing wrong with you. You're fine. She said, Dr. Habash was concerned for you. And I said, I'm grateful for that. And she said that he just wanted to make sure that I was okay before proceeding with a double mastectomy. She said that it's a major surgery. She said, but I'm okay with doing it. Do you hear my husband and father-in-law out there working on this form? So we went ahead and I asked her then, I said, well, since I can't do that, can I go ahead and have those ovaries and tubes out? Because let's just do one and done. If I could have a major reconstruction began at the same time that I could have a double mastectomy, surely I could have those tubes and ovaries out at the same time. And she said, yes, but time is of the essence. Your cancer is aggressive. It had already grown from like a 5. And at that point on the latest scan, we were bumping 2. So from 0.5 to 2 in tumor growth. And we were at 2 months. By the time they took it out, I was like at 3 at 2.5 months. So my cancer was aggressive. It wasn't even considered very aggressive. So just imagine women who have very aggressive, or men, anyone who has very aggressive cancer. Just think about the time of how quickly things are growing. I was really blown away by that myself. She said that it usually doesn't affect treatment as long as you get it within 3 months. I was at 2.5, and I was told that was quick from beginning to surgery, from diagnosis to surgery. And I can see why. There's so many tests that have to happen prior to surgery. And I'm going to cover some of those tests with y'all because I kind of brushed over them a little bit. And last night when I was laying in bed and I was really thinking about that, I think that was kind of an unfair thing. I said, well, I had to wait on for some testing to come back and stuff before we could have surgery. So I'm going to talk about that just for a minute before I log off today. The testing wasn't just, some testing. The testing in itself was a concern for me. They did the genetic testing, which I think a lot of people have heard of, the BRCA test, to see if it was genetic. I don't have breast cancer in my family heavily or anything, so it's not like I could say, my mom had breast cancer, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, pardon me, my sister. It's not like I could just go and just have this long lineage of breast cancer. My dad did pass away from prostate cancer. He was diagnosed very young, what's considered young, like 52. And he passed in his 50s from prostate cancer. I was told then that is like on the same set of genes as the gene for BRCA. I didn't know this. There are all kinds of interesting genetic things that I learned through this process. And I'm going to be honest that my biggest fear and concern was, as a mom, I so didn't want to have a gene that I passed to my children. It's one thing for me to have it and for me to have to deal with it. It's a whole new ball game if it's my babies and my babies' babies and their babies. Not that I could help it. Not that I could have done anything about it except for possibly not had kids. But, I married at 18. We had our first child at 21. We didn't even know about genetic testing and things like that back then. It just wasn't even in our sphere of thinking. And I wouldn't trade for my children. No, my Lily girl's going to decide to chime in. So that alone was very, it was a burden. It was a burden that I carried, that I shared with the Lord. I don't want to say I gave it to him. I'm going to say I would share it. I would give it to him for a little while. I'd pick it up. I'd give it to him for a little while. I'd pick it up. It's not what I'm called to do, but it's what I did as a mom. It's just what I did. It is real. It's what happened. I was more concerned about that than I was about metastasis, about chemo, about radiation, even facing my own surgery. And when I got the news that it was not genetic and that it was clear, I shed tears of joy that day. Just thinking about it now, I am so grateful. The Lord is faithful and he answered my prayers that my children would not have the genetics hanging over their heads. If they have the chance for breast cancer, it's the same odds I had. And I kind of feel like if I had it, then I've saved some other woman from having to go through it, because I have such amazing people supporting me, and maybe she wouldn't. So I just think I'm thankful. If this is what has to happen, let's do it, because I can see so many amazing things that the Lord has done in my life through this. So we are to the point where she is Dr. Birdwell now. Dr. Bosch is bowed out. He has told me that at any time I want to reconsider reconstruction, that is always on the table for me for the rest of my life. At any time I want to consider reconstruction, I was told it was the law. I can have reconstruction at any time. My insurance will cover it. There are no hindrances to that. So if I should decide to go back and have reconstruction, I can do that. And I also want to throw in a little caveat here. I think sometimes people don't know what to say to women with breast cancer, and they think that saying things like, oh, well, you're going to get a boob job. Oh, well, you're going to get new ones, or things like that, kind of are, for lack of better words, the thing to say because you don't know what else to say. Well, it's not the thing to say. The new ones aren't like choosing to have implants because you want to enhance yourself. Having reconstruction is completely different. It is like getting an artificial limb. It's never as good as the old ones. It's not like you're improving something that you had, it's replacing something that you lost. So their spouse isn't lucky because of it, and the woman's not lucky because of it either. So it's just a little food for thought there, a little bit of sensitivity. Because when she looks in the mirror, she doesn't look in the mirror and say, woo, lucky me. I got perky new breasts that are going to be perky for life. She may eventually get to that point, but somewhere deep inside, she still looks at those and goes, my old ones tried to kill me. So I'm grateful for these, but they're still not mine. So it's just a little food for thought. So tomorrow I'm going to pick up with how I ended up with my amazing Dr. LaRue, who did my ovarian surgery. And I'm going to pick up with how I got to through my transformation day and those kinds of things. I appreciate all of you. May all glory and honor be to God for his continued help for me, how he gives me my strength every day. I am asking prayers today for this right side where I pulled on that stitch because it is somewhat painful. I'm actually going to probably post some pictures after a while that I have not posted, that I felt like I just need to put some pictures out there just to let y'all know like what some of this is about. I'm going to put a little preface on it and say, you may not want to look at these pictures, but you may. But I'm going to post some pics later because it's not all it's cracked up to be. And I'm very blessed to be doing as well as I am. And I am strongest in the mornings. That's why you get me in the mornings. Because as the day goes on, I just kind of, I start out strong and I just kind of, until bedtime. And then I'm out like a light. So, but I appreciate y'all. Keep your prayers coming. And remember, love your family. You never know what life holds. Put Christ first. And I will talk to y'all again tomorrow.